Welcome back into the Rounding Third podcast. I'm Nick. We got the whole band back together tonight. Glad to have Sean back. How you doing, bud?
Good, fellas. Good to be back. I'm happy to be back. So
it's good to have you.
Excited.
Yes, absolutely. Me and Harrison have been struggling the last couple of weeks.
I know. I know. I'll never miss in season. It's the off season. Things happen, but I'll be ready to roll.
I get it. The wife says you have some laundry to do. You got to miss it. I get it.
Yeah, you certainly know. You know how it is.
Yeah.
Harrison, how you doing tonight, bud?
Good. Glad to be back on the show and have Sean back. So it should be fun tonight.
And you got your third ballpark behind you, I see.
Yeah. So welcome to Globe Life Park, home of my dark horse Texas Rangers.
I like that.
Yeah, it's awesome. All right, so if you guys haven't already, please follow our Facebook page, like our Facebook page, share it. Subscribe on YouTube, get the word out for people that love to talk baseball. Leading off tonight, we had an article come through that ESPN released about Bonds and Clemens in the Hall of Fame. Now, they talk about steroids and how it affected their career. Harrison just posted the article in the chat. I have some different takes on it, but Harrison, you want to summarize it more than I did? I don't know if I did it justice or.
Yeah. So what happened is there's a study done that and MLB actually endorses what was done, but they actually went back and restated Bonds and Clemens statistics from their first suspected PED use to the end of their careers to see what they would have done in theory without steroid use. And we can dive into the details here in a minute, but really they just restated their stats, assuming they didn't use steroids, to see where they would have ended up, at least as a way to understand what that impact of steroid use might be.
Yeah, Sean, you got a chance to look at it too. What do you think about it?
I do. Are we going to dive in?
Let's dive right into it.
Let's go.
The premise behind it, I don't disagree with. I mean, multiple times over the years, I know you and I have said, Barry Bonds was a Hall of Famer before the whole San Francisco Giants steroids thing blew up. And I'm not necessarily defending what he did, although I think it's completely overblown. But, this guy was a 40-40 guy in Pittsburgh. He won Gold Gloves. This guy wasn't some, Mendoza line player, and then he gets on steroids, and all of a sudden he's hitting 75 bombs a year.
Right.
You know what I mean? Clemens was nasty in college. Clemens was nasty early on with the Red Sox. I mean, there was steroids was more of a, I don't know Clemens obviously on a personal level, but he just seemed like the kind of guy who cared about winning and he saw it as a way to get an edge. He saw it as hey, I know guys in my locker room that are doing it, whether it's other pitchers or position players that are doing it, and I see them getting an edge, so I'm going to do it. I don't think either one of them are any threat to miss the Hall of Fame at all if they don't take.
No, and Clemens would just flat out outwork people. Clemens, they said in spring training, he would go throw his inning number one. He'd start the game. He would sprint out to the bullpen, and he would do ball pickups for the whole half inning until his team went back out on the field. He'd sprint to the pitcher's mound, throw his however many pitches, go back. However long his outing was in spring training, that's what he did. He did not stop moving during spring training. So he just outworked everybody.
Yeah, he's a bulldog.
Yeah, absolutely. And the same thing with Bonds. I mean, Bonds was a freak before. Like you said, 40-40 guy, perennial. I mean, all-star, Gold Gloves, all that stuff.
So let's do this. Let's go through Bonds first. So let's take a peek at the at kind of how they restated the stats and see what they think that his career would look like without steroid use. So let's start off with. So when you look at Bonds and his home run totals, so they believe that the first PED use for Bonds was somewhere time in '99. That's when the whole Balco thing blew up. And so this little gray line is actually tracking his real progress, and the red line shows where they think he would have ended up. So what they were doing was basically looking at the traditional tail end of a guy's career. He's going to fade, where Bonds took off and then had a kind of a steep decline. That was more of a that was injury related. That was not performance necessarily. And then he kind of popped back up, but he maintained a pretty steady pace to the end of his career, which is abnormal. So they think that really he should have started the tail off So given that, he would end his career with 551 home runs, which would have put him 15th all time. So not a
I'm
slouch.
sorry. There's no way you can tell me that in 2001 he'd hit 73 and they have him projected at 20. There's zero.
23. The article said 23 that year.
There's zero chance that Bonds only hits 23 home runs that year.
Oh, I couldn't agree.
Zero chance.
Yeah. In a span of literally 7 years, you took 210 home runs away from this guy.
Yeah,
I mean, you basically took 30 home runs a year from the guy and said, yeah, that's fine. You know, whatever. It is what it is. It's I look at this as, this is like the worst case scenario of where he would have ended up, and he's still a top 15 home run guy all time. Like, how do you not put a guy like that in the Hall of Fame?
Unfortunately, I think they're going to be treated just like we talked about Pete Rose a couple weeks ago, where, if they put Bonds and Clemens in the Hall of Fame now, their Hall of Fame speeches are just going to absolutely blow up the hall.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it sucks because they both belong in there. And
aren't they ineligible now? Like, wasn't this like their last year of being eligible?
This is their last year of eligibility. So if they don't get in January, I think the votes come in officially.
Yeah.
If they don't get in, then they'd have to wait until the committee.
Right.
Yeah. Whatever. But,
yeah. So now you jump to WAR, which is the wins above replacement metric that some of us love and some of us hate. So again, steep decline, consistent with age. Where Bonds was way up here. But even in this worst case scenario, he's still 128.7 WAR. He's still amongst the top outfielders of all time.
Yeah.
But like, here's if you pull that up real quick for me again, Harrison.
Yeah.
Right, like, because looking at it, right? So, he starts off in 86. We're looking at so from 1990 through 1998, 1999. That's a pretty consistent number of WAR.
Yep.
They're saying that the first PED popped up in 99, and then he jumps up to those two spikes up there.
Oh yeah.
But this guy in 2000 and 1999, 2000, 2001, 2002, 2003, he's not an old man at this point. Like, he's still at the back end of the prime of his career. I don't know how they can project that it's going to steeply decline like that. Look at where it is at 2003. He's got it under 5.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how they run those numbers.
Yeah, he's like negative WAR in his last couple seasons, which
I mean, fine. Maybe even in his last 2 seasons, maybe. But we're talking 2 or 3 years after this guy has a consistent 10, 9, 8, 9, 10 number. He's now at 4 3 years later.
Yeah. Right. So they also based it on every other player's career, right? So Bonds and Clemens are the top 1%. Right. Well, they're not gonna fade off like the rest of the league does.
And especially with the way you say, especially with the way Clemens just outworked you. Especially there was no way, and I'm sure the end of his career, the steroids helped him with the longevity of being able to work out. I admit that, but his mentality was not going to let him get outworked.
No, absolutely.
No.
Never. And then lastly, there was we've got a look at. So then they brought in OPS plus to the equation. And again, pretty strong drop off. And these numbers, granted, these numbers are way above his historical norms. So you can say, yeah, his on base plus slugging was out of this world in those years and was probably influenced by it. But he wasn't going to go, to your point, Sean, he wasn't going to go from here, kind of a historical trend here, to just falling off a cliff that fast.
I don't think so either. But if there's one graphic you could pull up to point to it and be steroids, it would be this one.
Yeah, because he skyrockets from 99.
Which I get. I get why. I mean, he's either putting the ball 6,000 feet or he's taking walks.
With the bases loaded.
Yeah, it was just kind of, that's a silly one. So that one I get.
I mean, you even look at this, right? But if you take that projected line that's trending down, you take that away or even level it out a little bit, it doesn't look as crazy as it does right now. You know what I mean? The distance between those doesn't look so drastic. But since they just literally dropped them off a cliff, you're oh, look how high the numbers are. That's crazy high. I mean, yes, they're obviously higher. You can see it on the graph, but you flatten out that line and it looks completely different.
Right. So I think in typical Major League Baseball fashion, they basically supported a study that ran an absolute worst case, arguably almost a smear campaign about the back end of Bonds' career, and yet proved he belongs in the Hall of Fame. So rather than tearing him down and saying he shouldn't be there, they basically proved if you basically make him a mediocre player for the back half of his career, he was so good in the first half, he should be in the Hall of Fame anyways. So in typical MLB fashion, they released something they thought proved something, and they actually didn't.
Yeah, see, like I got that from the article. I had texted you, and I was like, "What was your take on it?" Because like I felt like they were kind of slandering both of them. Because it'd be like, "Oh, if they didn't take the PEDs, look at this drop off. Like they don't belong in the hall." But then at the end of the article, it's like, "Yeah, we think they should go in," and you're like, "Wait, what?"
Right.
Like, what did I just read?
Yeah, it literally it reads like a smear campaign to prove why they don't belong in there, and then the conclusion is their numbers are still so good they should be in there. So really, what are we talking about?
Yeah. Goodness.
So I think we all agree from our conversations back and forth, based on those graphics, even if you strip Bonds down to a shell of himself, he still belongs in the Hall of Fame.
Yes, both of them do. Bonds and Clemens.
Yeah. So now let's go through Clemens.
I'll go. I think I said it on this before when we recorded. I'll put all the steroids. I don't care. You did steroids back in the day, back when like baseball was hanging on for its dear life, like, and they brought the game back. Like, damn right, they belong in it, but more than some of these other dudes do.
Well, and I also brought up the point where it's like, again, like going down the rabbit hole, but like Tony La Russa's in the Hall of Fame, right? Did he benefit from the steroid era?
Right.
Of course he did. He got all those wins because all his players were taking steroids. Did he know about it? Of course he knew about it. All these managers did. So should he be in the Hall of Fame? Because all those wins are tainted by steroids.
You're right.
Well, it becomes one of those where do you draw the line? You know, if you're gonna.
Do we start? I mean, if that's the case, though, Nick, just to play devil's advocate, not that I don't agree with you because I do, but like you got to start taking wins away from the starting pitchers of those games then too, though, right? Because like those, you know what I mean? Like, where do you draw the line?
I just say baseball didn't exist from '99 till today, just to take it all out of the record books.
And that's what you have to do. You almost have to like take that whole era and just erase it, like it never happened.
But you've already
acknowledge what it was.
Yeah, although you've already lost that because Bagwell and Ivan Rodriguez are in the Hall of Fame, and you can't tell me that one or both didn't take steroids.
Well, I think you've got to suspect everybody. I mean, I think in that time it was so prevalent. And to go back to the very beginning of this, MLB didn't react until years after it. They needed the summer of '98 and the home run chase. They needed those things.
100%.
Which is why
MLB was complicit in this too, allowing it to happen, knowing that baseball after the '94 season was hanging by a thread. And I'm not saying Major League Baseball handed out needles that were preloaded, but they weren't exactly running from it. They needed that run of 97, 98, 99, 2000 to bring the game back to life. And it was really in MLB's best interest that it even happened. I
couldn't agree with you more. I think if you could be a fly on the wall of all those locker rooms, you would have seen 99+% of those clubhouse people, team doctors, managers just turning the other cheek. They all knew. They all knew, pun absolutely intended. They all knew what was going on.
Yeah.
They all knew. And baseball's going to come back now retroactively. Oh, well, big thing against steroids. They all knew. And like you said, they needed it. Right. So do I think they were handing the needles out like you said? No, I don't. I agree with you. I don't think that. But everything short of that, though.
But it took them like 10 years to react to it. That's the funny part.
Only because that commission came out to do that.
Right.
What was it, the Warren Commission? And then at that point, they can't get up there and say, "Yeah, we were fine with it," because it was blatantly against the rules. So they kind of had to cover their asses. Again, pun absolutely intended. But I'm with. And if that study was never commissioned, I don't think this would be nearly as big as it is now.
Yeah, poor George Mitchell out there running around interviewing these guys who did not want to talk to him.
I said Warren Commission. Yeah, Mitchell Commission.
Yeah, that poor
That's
guy
the
was just
guy in me.
Poor sucker running a fool's errand. But baseball had to cover itself the best it could.
Yeah, I mean, and the reports with Canseco coming out, Ken Caminiti came out on Sports Illustrated and just completely.
Yep. All right, so do we want to let's take a peek at Clemens. Let's take a peek at Clemens here. So, go ahead, Sean, while I pull it up.
No, I was just saying hi to Nick back because Nick came back.
Welcome back, Nick.
Thanks.
All right, Clemens. So, same idea. You got the first half of his career, you got the dotted line. So in 98, they feel like that was the first use for him based on what they've got for records and all that. And then you see the wins, losses. He had those half seasons that he was doing where he was winning like 12 games. And, so you had some of that mixed in there. But ultimately, they show the same kind of drop off. And then they also show his career ending sooner because they really feel Clemens got an extra probably 3 seasons, although probably 2 of them were only half seasons, that he wouldn't have gotten otherwise. So you'll notice that the red line ends before the gray line does because they feel like he actually extended his career with ped use. But even then, he was still
that's probably
damn
not
near a
wrong,
300 game winner.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
So even if you had a mediocre Clemens at the tail of his career, and his career was actually roughly 3 seasons shorter, he still would have won close to 300 games. I mean, there's guys in there that have win totals in the low 200s.
And again, the wins isn't a good stat, really.
No.
Like it's your team if your offense doesn't perform for you, like there's.
Yeah.
Oh shit! I mean, you could throw a 1-hit, 1-run, 7-inning game and blow the save and get a no decision. I mean, shit. I mean, that is brutal.
Yeah, this is that headline stat that the writers love, though.
Yeah, and I get it because it's a quick number to look at, but it's not indicative.
No, it's a very small snapshot of something you don't even control. So let's go to innings pitched next.
Well, this one is where I do agree with the study, I think, in a sense.
This seems fair.
It does, because I really do think his career ends sooner. Like to me, there's no doubt in my mind. I mean, those last few years in Houston, I mean, this guy he was a bulldog, but he was, I wouldn't say a shell of himself, but he wasn't obviously vintage Roger Clemens because he was 1 billion years old, and he's still out there battling, but he's out there battling because he's taking steroids. It's like, I'll give the writers this one, but he's still 1,000, not the writers, but like the ESPN, but he's still 1,000%, in my opinion, belongs in the Hall. Projected innings pitched almost 2,200 to 4,200 innings.
Yeah, they shaved 700 innings off his career, and he still pitched more innings than probably at least half the pitchers that are in the Hall.
Yeah.
All right, and then the last one, which, again, if you're a metrics guy, this is a good one for you. If you're not, then maybe it's lost. But pitcher WAR. So again, like fall off a cliff WAR, and he still was 111.3, which would still put him in the upper echelon of all starting pitchers all time. So it's, again, ESPN and Major League Baseball kind of conducted this study, put it out there, tried to basically, downplay Clemens' career, and all they did was prove that he belongs in the Hall of Fame where they don't want him.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, they're going to be let in after the fact. They belong. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I don't see them getting in January. I mean, it has to be a really big campaign to get them in, but they're not going to make. The Hall's not going to risk having them blow them up. You know what I mean?
No.
And there's the same thing with the Pete Rose, like we said earlier.
They'd have so much egg on their face, it's not even funny. And you're right, they won't get in. And the Veterans Committee may come back around one day when they get a little, insight and enlightenment and let them in after the fact. But it is a tragedy that some of the best players of, the era that we grew up watching baseball won't be in the Hall, but a bunch of guys who are, pretty good or maybe the Hall of very good are in there with a plaque where these guys don't have one. It's a shame, and MLB should be embarrassed it got to this point.
And
it is a shame. Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Oh, all their stuff is in the Hall of Fame anyways.
Right.
Like, I know it's the Hall of Fame and museum, but if you're going to put everything underneath the same roof, you're not letting them in the Hall, take their shit out. That's how I feel about it. But if you're going to celebrate their careers, why can't they have a plaque? It doesn't make any sense to me. It makes zero sense to me.
No.
Well, yeah, and I think Harrison makes a good point too when he had said some of these guys were the best players growing up in our era, right? And that's an important thing. Like we talk about the Hall of Fame in any sport, and it's guys that transcended the game, guys that changed the way that the game is played. Like, yes, it was in that steroid era, but what I think is unfair, because I think the way history is going to look back on it is they're going to look back and say that this player, that player, this player, that player was part of the steroid era, which they were. But equally, as we just said, so was Major League Baseball themselves. Major League Baseball is just as implicit in this steroid era as some of these players that they're trying to smear. So I just don't think it's fair for then Major League Baseball to like kind of thumb their nose out at these players, like, you don't belong in the Hall. It's like, they saved your sport, they saved your game.
Yeah,
absolutely. You know, like, and yes, what they did was technically against the rules, and I'm not advocating for it, but that entire era of baseball made the game the way it is now. Like, they belong in there.
Yeah, there's
an
entire generation of baseball fans that remembers the summer of '98 like it was yesterday, and the fun of watching Sosa, Chase McGuire, and then Bonds was in the race for a little while and kind of fell out of it, and it was that was a summer that baseball was fun again, and brought us all back.
Yeah, they belong. That's it. End of story. It's. Dude, when you get walked with the bases loaded intentionally, steroids or not, I mean, Barry Bonds was the best hitter of our generation. You still have to put the bat on the ball. Like, if I take steroids right now, it's not going to make me hit a 95-mile-an-hour fastball. No.
Oh, no.
I might be able to foul it off a little bit harder, but that's about it. Like, I still got to put the bat on the ball.
Yeah, you're still trying to hit a round ball with a round bat and hit it square. Yeah. And that is probably the single hardest thing to do in all the sports. And, you know, did steroids add 10 feet to a pop fly to the outfield? You know, maybe 10, 20, 30 feet, doesn't matter. You still got to hit it 300, 400 feet just to get it there.
Not to keep, I know we've been on this for 20 plus minutes, but that was the crazy thing when I was reading the article when they were trying to take down Barry Bonds' home runs. And I'm like, okay, granted, this guy has like a 35-minute highlight tape, but I don't remember too many Barry Bonds home runs barely scraping the wall. Like, they're trying to take out all these home runs. Like, steroids is going to add maybe, like, yeah, but if, like, there are a bunch of wall scrapers, then sure. Like, this guy was hitting moon bombs. Like, it didn't matter if he had steroids for, like, a ton of them.
Yeah, dude. There's so many baseballs out in McCovey Cove. It doesn't even friggin' matter, dude. Like, this is unreal.
I used to love watching all the kayaks lined up out there to try to catch one because you knew he was going to hit one out there.
Dude, on his 73rd home run, dude, when they would like pull back and show all of McCovey Cove, like the kayaks couldn't even move, dude. They were just all wedged in there. It was crazy, man.
Yeah. But, the funny thing is, before all this, I was completely against letting the steroid era players in. I thought it was bad for baseball. I thought it was an era that MLB should just pretend like never happened. But the more I've read and looked at it, and then studies like this, the more I go, you just can't pretend like that era didn't happen. You can't pretend like MLB is this sacrosanct group that can't be touched. They were part of the problem. So you got to take it for what it is, put these guys in, and acknowledge the history of baseball. And
that's the hard part for me. Right, is like if it was a handful of guys that were doing something like completely behind everyone's back, and like that was, you know, you found out when they were doing it and then you put a stop to it right away, like fine, that would be easier for me to accept. Like fine, you can't celebrate these guys, like you had said. I mean, this was a commission that was put forth 10 plus years after the entire league and all the players and coaches and managers and front office people, they all knew about it. It's like it just seems like such a, I don't know. It doesn't seem right. Like, it doesn't seem right.
No.
So, yeah, I'm with you.
Hey, yep. So all three of us, yeah, they belong. No ands, ifs, or buts about it.
No.
All right. We're going to move on to fifth inning showdown, where we are going to discuss the universal DH. Is it good or is it bad? Who wants to take this one? Who wants to stat?
You can take it.
Oh, go Nick.
All right. Well, I think the universal DH should be put in. So here's my thing on it. 2020, we went to the universal DH, and it didn't affect the game at all. No one really even noticed the difference. I think having the pitchers hit in the NL is a clear advantage for National League teams in interleague play because AL pitchers have never seen an at bat or taken an at bat, even a sacrifice bunt, where NL pitchers have. They've seen live game action. So when an AL team goes to an NL park, I think the NL team has the advantage. Where if you go from NL to the AL, there's really no advantage because you're just plugging in an extra hitter. Okay. I mean, that's how I see it. But I think a universal DH, going to the lockout part, it gives, 15 other guys a job,
Yeah, I'll say I probably agree with you. It's probably better for the game in a way. I like National League Baseball though. I like watching the pitchers hit. I think managers have to be smarter, more efficient when it comes to being proactive, when it comes to managing a bench and managing a bullpen, and the manager is a bigger part of the game. Not to say AL managers aren't, but you have to be more consistently a part of the game as a manager in the National League. I agree too, because I do think National League teams have that advantage, but it's even more than just their pitchers have seen at bats, right? It's when you're an American League team, you build your roster in an entirely different way. You build your roster with, it's a different bullpen. You have different bench players. You use the players year round differently. I find it so, it's the game and I love the game of baseball. I really do. But I find a World Series comes down to a game 7, and let's say it's at National League Park, everything you've worked for as the American League team, it comes down to one game where you have to play essentially with a hand tied behind your back because that's not how your roster's built.
Right.
I just whether they do universal DH or not, I just think both leagues should be the same. Right. I think it would be better for baseball if it was a universal DH, but let's just say for the sake of argument, the American League adopted the pitchers hitting. I still think you would achieve the same result because the teams are built the same. You're building the team the same way. Yeah.
I kind of see it as in the AFC football. You guys can have a punter, but in the NFC, your quarterback has to punt.
Yeah, right.
It's
right. Something that.
Yeah, it's just kind of weird to me. But you're right. If you make it even on both sides, whether pitchers hit or it's the universal DH, then I would agree with that. But
yep. Yeah. I agree with the point about the competitive balance piece. If you got the same rules in each league, you build your rosters the same, you play the game the same, and it's you're playing by the same set of rules in theory. I also agree with one of the arguments that MLBPA has with why they want it, and it's because they can actually use it as a way to keep guys from taking so many days off. So in theory, you can rotate, that, one of your outfielders in as the DH for one game. So he's not playing the field, but he's still going to get some at bats. So rather than being out of the lineup and the fans don't see that player, now he's just the DH and he's still in the game. So they see it as a way to actually reduce injuries potentially by being able to give guys more frequent rest rather than plugging just some big, over the hill slugger in the spot and making it a permanent position. They can actually use it as a way to rotate guys through and keep them fresh. So the game's better. So I certainly see the pros to it, but I'm an adamant fan of of the National League style and the American League style being different. I like when pitchers hit. I like the roster construction. I like the way the game is played. I like the gamesmanship of how managers do double switches, how they time when they bring relievers in. And baseball's biggest problem is you've got all these guys at the plate that just stand there and stare at pitches or swing from their heels. Putting one more person like that in the lineup who's going to see 8 pitches, strike out 3 times, see 8 pitches every at bat, strike out 3 times, maybe occasionally hit a bomb. I don't think it helps the game. They need to get the game back to a point where it moves along and there's hitting and running, there's bunting, and in the National League, you see a lot more of that. The American League, you see none of it. It's basically everybody waits on the 3-run bomb, and if you don't get it, you lose. And it's just we talked about the Yankees ad nauseum with how their lineup works, but it's 4 or 5 guys in a row who just take pitch after pitch and foul off pitch after pitch and then strike out. And watching that lineup hit is the most boring thing in sports. I think adding one more person into everybody's lineup like that just isn't going to make the game any more fun to watch.
Oh, I agree, 100%. 100%. But it's fantasy sports, man. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, it's football's going that way too, man. I mean, you just don't see. I mean, obviously, last Monday night being different with the Patriots and the wind and all that, but you don't see games like that anymore. Everything's about points and everything. Time you go near receiver, it's pass interference because we need points on the board. We need points on the board. Baseball's doing it too. We need home runs. We need big highlight plays. We need this, that, or the other. Like, people don't enjoy a hit and run the way we do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
but that's the thing too. You put the ball in play more, you're gonna have more highlights.
Oh no. I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah.
I'm just saying what, like, the high level, like, they don't care about that. That doesn't matter.
Right.
Like, that doesn't. You know what I mean? Like a hit and run that, I'm on first, Nick, you're at the plate. Like, I take off, you put it between the first base and second base hole. I get to third. Right. That's an awesome play that's exciting to watch, but it doesn't show up on a stat sheet of fantasy baseball more than just a single.
Right.
Yeah. And I agree with Ben's point about, the two different rules, but also, I think interleague play was one of the smartest things baseball did, was to start to mix the styles of play to get American League fans exposed to more National League baseball. I still feel like the ultimate equalizer is in the World Series when you have to play by somebody else's rules in their ballpark. You talk about a home field advantage. Not only is it their ballpark, but it's also their rules. And now all of a sudden your American League pitcher is hitting, or your National League pitcher is not, and you've got a DH in there, and who you're going to use and how you're going to set your lineup. And it becomes much more of a chess match than let's just throw a guy in there who might accidentally run into one for a 3-run bomb and change the outcome of a series, when in reality the guy doesn't belong on the field because he's got no utility other than the ability to swing hard. It completely changes the game. And I do think you look around baseball, and I think what's ruined baseball is look around the GM ranks. Every single one of those guys now is like a Harvard or Yale educated pocket protector wearing weenie that probably never played the game. And they're just sitting behind a computer making calls on stats and metrics and bringing these guys in because because they're exit velos and all this stuff. But I don't think a single one of these GMs could actually walk on the field and tell you what they see. They just know that, those metrics and stats win me games. That's what I get paid for. I don't care the quality of the game. And I think the game sucks. I think because of what they've done to the game, with it all being stats and metrics driven and all these decisions being made behind a computer screen, you get these one-dimensional players because, I need so many guys that do this and so many guys that do that. And it's literally like building a fantasy team. If I get my levels all just right, we're going to win a championship. And the actual talent search isn't what it used to be.
I agree 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think both leagues need to be the same, whether it's pitchers hit or DH. Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't think pitchers hitting is going to be the universal change.
Oh, well, they'll never do that. I mean, think about how much money these DHs are being paid in the American League. They're never going to get rid of that position. The only way to make them the same is to make the universal DH.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hate the universal DH, but I agree with you both. They're going to put it in because it makes too much sense for the players. It makes too much sense to the owners. And they're gonna go down that path and see if it sticks with the fans. But I would be willing to bet if in 2 or 3 years they're finding that viewership and all that's not up, they'll probably go back after it.
Yeah. I mean, who knows? We might see pitchers DHing. Like, if you got pitchers that can hit.
Like Greinke.
Greinke, Madison Bumgarner, like all those guys that can rake.
My boy DeGrom guy rakes at the dish.
Shohei Ohtani.
He got lucky. He doesn't
got lucky. He was a shortstop in college.
Ooh, college. I was a third baseman in college, and now I'm doing a podcast.
Talking about the guys that are still playing because we can.
Right. Yeah. So what if he hit like 429 this year? Like, luck. Anyways.
Well, for a pitcher to hit 429, that's like what, 8 hits and all the at bats they get.
I think
No, that would mean he would have to get 8 hits and like 17 at bats.
He was raking at the beginning of the year for sure.
Yeah.
Isn't that about how long DeGrom stays in the lineup each year?
Yeah, that's a good point too. Yeah, that's I brought that on. Yeah, he does. He can't stay healthy. I'll give you that.
God, he's so good though. He's so good.
Right. All right. Yeah. So we are going to move on to our 7th inning stretch now. where we are in the top 10 of our organization. Whoop, whoop. So 10 through 6, and then next week will be our top 5. So we have number 10, Harrison and Sean. Who wants it?
Go, Sean.
Oakland. I have Oakland at 10 in the top 10. And mainly when I was going through this, I was kind of the ones in the bottom. I kind of forewent. I don't know the right way to say that word. They're the historical aspect of them. I just couldn't do it with Oakland. They were too good. They were, and I love their uniforms. Absolutely love their uniforms. I'm biased with the uniforms. But I just they were too good. They started out in Philly, right? Obviously, but then they go to Oakland. They were too good back in the day in the 70s, winning all those titles. And then I do feel I have to give them credit. I know they haven't won like in our lifetime as far as a title is concerned, but man, I mean that team in the early 2000s going into the mid 2000s before they really hit that bad lull again. But like that was a team when the Moneyball thing was all like they were just, and we're seeing it now how like the Red Sox in the middle of their rebuild right now, that they win 91, 92 games a year. People are just like, wow, they won 90 games. Oakland was winning like mid to high 90s, like 6 or 7 years in a row. Yeah. We're talking with minimal payroll, like, so, and they didn't win the title. And obviously that's kind of the big thing that everyone shoots for, but man, I mean, they did a really good job for a really long time. They weren't in the best division back in the day. But I have them at 10, and a lot for historical purposes, but they're my 10.
Those uniforms are just so polarizing. People either love them or hate them.
Well, anyone that hates them, we probably wouldn't be friends because I think they're awesome.
The yellow and the Kelly green, man.
Oh, God.
They're so clean. They're so clean.
Good. Harrison, number 10.
Number 10 for me would be the Angels. So again, good market. It is they've got some studs if they would just actually participate in free agency for more than 5 minutes. They've had some runs, but it's a good ballpark, good market. The organization itself is I would say relatively strong. They have not gotten over the hump, but they could. They're another one of those teams that's like perpetually 1 or 2 pieces away, and they could be there. They do okay with kind of a skeleton crew around Trout, but could do so much better.
So we've talked about them ad nauseum, but
they're the ultimate frustrating franchise because we talk about the talent. It's just like they're the ultimate. Like, what are you doing? When are you going to figure it out?
Yeah, never.
Never.
I mean, they had those good runs when they had Sosha there, and and I just think back to all the players you had. Gloss and Edmonds and
Garrett Anderson.
That's right, Garrett Anderson. Like you've always had like really consistently good teams until these last few years.
Tim Salmon.
Yeah, I used to love Salmon.
So did I.
Sean, Sean Figgins, the little spark plug that got everything going.
Sean Figgins, what a name drop, dude.
Yeah, but I mean, those
David
those
Eckstein,
teams were.
I mean, like.
Oh yeah, that's right.
That's right. Good ball players.
They did. They had that. They always had consistently good ball clubs. The last few years, they've lost their way a little bit, and they're retooling. But I think they'll get there.
Nice. My number 10 is the Detroit Tigers. 9,400 wins, 12 Hall of Famers. Just some off the top: Ty Cobb, Hank Greenberg, Al Kaline, Jack Morris, Hal Newhouser, and Alan Trammell. 4 for 11 in World Series. So I mean they've been 11 times, but only won 4.
That hurts.
16 playoff appearances. That's why they're 10th. I mean, I probably historical wise the Tigers are up there, but they barely cracked the top 10 just because 4 for 11 kind of hurts. But,
wait, so
12 Hall of Famers.
As a franchise, they've been to the playoffs 16 times.
Yeah.
In 11 out of the 16, they go to the show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is.
But they've only won 4 though.
Well, but even still though, like to get there 11 out of 16 times, like.
And those 4 have been recently, if you think about it. Probably.
That's legitimate feast or famine.
Right.
Yeah.
Like if you make the playoffs, there's a decent chance we're going to the series.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Harrison, number 9.
Number 9, I had the Astros. You know, you can't really argue with the success they've had. Always an organization that has been kind of around. They did have those really, really awful years before they came back to the American League. You know, but they had runs before that. You know, you've got a lot of star power in their history. The Killer Bees, and you had Clemens through there, Billy Wagner, all those guys. You had a lot of star power come through there. They've been a wrecking crew for the last 5 years. You know, even when you don't count the cheating years, they're back in it again this year. Like it's a solid core, you know, good market, good ballpark, you know, huge market in Houston, and just an organization that probably isn't going anywhere for a while. They've got money, resources, a strong minor league team, and a solid roster, so they'll be around for a while.
Yeah. Number 9 for you, Sean?
Philadelphia. I think Philly's got a really good market, and they play. And I'll tell you, I know obviously bad timing for saying this because the Braves obviously just won the title, but the Phillies don't play in this murderers row division, right? Like it's every year. I mean, that's, you know, the Nationals had that one year where they went out and won it, but it's not a division where you look at it, it's like, oh, it's Sox or Yankees, or actually Tampa now. But it's, you know, it's and they attract some good free agents. They get some young players that they bring up through the system, some guys that they bring in. You know, and it's a great market, rabid fan base. I mean, and I hate the city of Philadelphia, but like they love their sports teams.
Yeah.
So you know, kind of historically, I don't know, Nick, I'm sure obviously you have all the franchise historical, but I mean, it's one of the original franchises, man. They've been around for a long, long time. So yeah, I couldn't really justify and put them much higher. But I do think for that kind of historical purpose, for the fact that it's a big fan base, they get some good free agents. I do think they develop talent pretty well, whether they end up showing out for Philly or they go somewhere else and play. But, you know, there's a lot of Philadelphia draft picks that are still poking around baseball.
Sure.
So I, you know, had him in there at 8 or at 9. Sorry.
At 9. My number 9 is the Cleveland Indians, not the Guardians.
Nope.
Because they're not a franchise yet. 9,592 wins, 13 Hall of Famers, 2 for 6 World Series, so 15 playoff appearances, but they're there because of the 9,500 wins and the 13 Hall of Famers. Yeah, I mean, just
and probably they probably own one of the best teams to never win a World Series.
I was just going to say the same thing. Those
It's
late 90s teams were so good to never have won, just so good.
That has to be top to bottom. Probably the best team, right, to never win a title.
I mean, yeah, you had
loaded.
They were loaded. I mean,
Alomar, Baerga, Vizquel,
Manny was hitting
Tomey.
7th.
Manny, that's right, Manny early Manny.
7th.
Sandy Alomar Jr., their catcher.
Yeah, all that's right. Yeah.
Those teams are so good.
Was Travis Fryman on that team, or was he on the Tigers? I don't know, but
no, he spent some time in Cleveland.
Yeah, I mean, they were good. They were really
so good, so good.
Loaded.
Yeah. Everybody went for 9, right?
Yep.
Number 8, I got the Chicago Cubs. We got 11,000 wins as a franchise. I mean,
a lot of wins.
It's crazy. 11 Hall of Famers: Ernie Banks, Fergie Jenkins, Ryan Sandberg, Lee Smith, Billy Williams, and Hack Wilson. Hack Wilson has the career season record for RBIs, 191 RBIs in a season. Yeah, it's crazy. We all know their World Series status is not very good. They're 3 for 11 all time with 21 playoff appearances. But Cubs are at 8 because of the 11,000 wins, 11 Hall of Famers. Kind of hard to not put them there.
Yep.
So.
Yep, that's fair.
8 for Sean.
Houston. You know, pretty much what Harrison said just when he had him at 9 there. I mean, that's a team who I remember when I was in like high school, like maybe 8th grade, starting in high school, there was like when they were just that absolute laughing stock back in the National League. But, you know, they did have runs earlier in the 70s, in the 80s, and literally littered with star power. Nolan Ryan is a guy that obviously sticks out for me with those awesome like rainbow uniforms. Those things were sweet too.
Those were money.
money. I mean, so nice. They must have been so hot wearing those things in Houston.
Yeah.
But, you know, but then you add on what they're doing now, you know, and just to add on to what you had said, Harrison, like they're not going anywhere. They got young players, young talent. Free agents want to go there. Like players want to go play in Houston. I've never been there. I hear it's an awesome place. It's a great market. But I think they have a really smart front office as well. Like they just do the things like the cheating, yes, whatever. But like they do things thoroughly. They do things well. They seem to pick and draft very well. I mean, they were at the top of the first round for how many years, and a lot of those are starting to click now. So, you know, I wouldn't have been able to justify them not being in the top 10. So I had them there at 8.
Yeah, great points about Houston, and I do agree with you about the cheating. It's I don't necessarily put that on the organization. I mean, that was orchestrated by the coaches and players, and I think the organization did the right thing by reacting quickly. You know, eliminating the folks that were involved, cleaning it up, getting away from it. And I don't necessarily hold the cheating against the organization. I think it just impacts some success they had, but I think you nailed that. Number 8 for me was the Atlanta Braves. I've always been a big Braves fan. I don't know why. You know, again, Atlanta's an awesome city, great market, lots of history. You know, and they've always had those players like that you just enjoyed to watch. You know, Freddie Freeman's one that comes to mind. You know, Chipper Jones, like these guys that were like these titans of the league. You know, the likable guys. They've always had long-term players. They for whatever reason, like people that come up with them stay there. And I think back to the days of, you know, Smoltz and Maddox and Glavine. They're all together forever. And then you had Chipper Jones, who was there forever. Like they've always had these long-term players that kind of get entrenched. And I think it's a testament to Atlanta, the way that organization is run, the way that city is. And I just think that, you know, that's a top-notch, top 10, clearly.
Agreed. It helped having Roberto Cox there behind the bench there for so long, though.
Bobby,
I mean, that helps.
Bobby.
That helps keeping guys there, you know?
Yep.
I mean, that's a guy I would have loved to play for a guy like that. I mean, that would have been awesome. You know? So, not to cut you off, but I think that's you're spot on about Atlanta.
And you have Maddox, Glavine, and Smoltz at the top of your rotation. Why would you want to go anywhere else?
No, but I'm saying if you're those three, like you could have gone chasing the money.
Absolutely, they did.
You could have, but again, why would you? You know, you have the best chance to win. And they were in the World Series every single year. They just ran into the buzzsaw.
But you have yourself a manager who galvanizes a room. Players want to play for. I mean, if you have some dickwad behind the bench, like so what? I'll go chase my money. I can't deal with this guy every day for the next 5 years. But a guy like Bobby Cox, hell yeah, I will.
Yeah,
you know?
They've always hired good managers, and I will even give the Braves a pass on John Rocker.
Dude, you don't even have to give him a pass on John Rocker. Dude, he's easily top 5 closers of all time.
But that guy was certifiably nuts. Like, oh my god,
it was amazing. It was
the sprint out of the bullpen. I mean, that might be the one player in Braves history they want to just like pretend it didn't happen.
The guy was electric. Everything about him, electric.
So great.
And the Mets fans love him, right, Sean?
Yeah, more or less.
Just nothing. A couple D batteries decided the head won't fix.
More or less. Hey, listen, I'm not from New York. I mean, I don't. You know.
Goodness.
I'll give myself a pass on that one.
Yep.
All right. Number 7. Who do we got?
I had the Cubs.
Okay, Cubs.
So yeah.
Sean.
So I had the Cubs. I had Houston right after him, and I got the Cubs right after you, Nick. I just don't know if, aside from the World Series struggles that everyone, you know, but then they've had some really bad years too. Recently. Like we're talking 50-win, 60-win season bad. Yeah. I just still don't know how anyone in their right mind can't put them in the top 10. Like it's just, it's a long storied franchise. They've been around a billion years. You know, it's like the Red Sox, like the Yankees, like they're just kind of synonymous with Major League Baseball.
Right.
Like it's, you know, you can take someone off the street that barely knows baseball and tell them to name 5 teams. The Cubs are going to be one of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, so it's a hard thing to keep them. Numbers, statistics, wins, losses, all that stuff aside, it's just a hard thing to keep them out.
Yeah.
So I had them at 7.
Yeah, it's kind of like the original 6 in hockey, right? I mean,
right.
That's where the Cubs are historically.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Harrison, number 7.
Number 7 for me was the Phillies. You know, Sean just had him. I have him for a lot of the same reasons. You know, generally a team that's in it. You know, they also had some really lean years as they did some rebuilding and, you know, turned the whole front office over and things like that. But, you know, good market, you know, new ballpark. They've got some real, you know, kind of star power in their lineup. They've got a good minor league system, good pitching. They've had that for years. They've always produced. You know, they spend a lot of time producing some really good players. They can never produce them all at the same time. And they've finally gotten to a point where they've got a consistent balance of you know, kind of homegrown and then store bought. And it's a good organization, tons of history, and as much as I absolutely hate the city of Philadelphia, there's no city I hate more than Philadelphia. They are really kind of, and they're not a original six type, you know, tier of team, but they're not far behind.
Yeah. Number 7 for me, I think, is probably one of the most drastic differences we've had so far. I have the Cincinnati Reds at 7.
Oh yeah.
So Cincinnati they always play on opening day, right? They're always the first major league team to play because I believe they're the oldest. 10,700 wins as a franchise, 9 Hall of Famers, the Big Red Machine. I mean, they were nasty. Johnny Bench, Barry Larkin, Joe Morgan, Tony Perez, 5 for 9 in World Series, 16 playoff appearances. But I mean, they've just, you know, one of those franchises that have been around since, you know, forever. So they're at 7 for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to argue with that. I mean, with all that reasoning, and I mean, that's facts, man. I mean, those are just facts. So that's tough to argue.
Yeah, a lot of history.
Number 6, last one.
All right, I'll grab this one. I got the Dodgers at 6. It kind of pains me to put the Dodgers there. I hate so much about LA. I hate that ballpark. It's a junk ballpark in a ravine. I don't like the way that Friedman has turned that organization to what it is, just spending like crazy, you know, building these super teams and then still not winning, which is kind of fitting and they deserve it. I don't like the organization. I don't like a lot of their history. I was not a Tommy Lasorda guy. I think the ownership group's kind of a hot mess of celebrities. I don't like a lot of things about the Dodgers, but you can't argue with the fact that they're in Los Angeles. They are an absolutely iconic ball club and organization. They can develop talent if they have to. They can go buy it if they need to. They have resources at the disposal that most don't, and a lot of it relies on being in that market. So for that alone, you can't leave an LA team out of the top 10.
Yeah, I agree. Number 6 for you, Sean?
San Francisco Giants. I think it's what they did this year was surprising, but I don't think completely I mean, it's a team that sticks around. We talk about how Houston is a front office and a franchise that does things the right way. I see the Giants kind of the same way. Like, I think they draft well, they develop well, they don't push their young guys to the majors too soon and ruin them. You know, I think you know, they had that run. What was it, like every even year, like 2012, 2014, 2016, like they're winning titles. But they won titles with a lot of homegrown talent. Like, they didn't buy their titles. You know, they went and they got the pieces where they needed to get them. Don't get me wrong, like every team does. But these were players that they identified, they drafted, they developed. You know, and then the historical side of them. I mean, they were in New York. I mean, they're not a new, you know, this is a team a franchise that has been around for a long, long time. You know, I mean, if you look at them, I mean, how do you still not? I think he probably ended up did because he played 1,000 years. But I mean, when you picture Willie Mays, I mean, he was a New York Giant. I mean, he ended up playing in San Francisco, I think, for like maybe 1 or 2 years. But you know, I mean, that's that organization. Maybe like one of the greatest ball players of all. Not maybe, definitely one of the greatest ball players of all time.
I think the greatest.
Yeah,
to be honest.
And I certainly think an argument can be made. I mean,
for sure.
I've made that argument. I won.
I know.
So he's number 1 in my books.
So yeah, to me, I couldn't necessarily justify him in the top 5, but certainly not far off at 6 there.
All right. Number 6, this is the second one that is drastically different from everybody, is the Pittsburgh Pirates. Like, I was
Yeah.
going to wear my men's league jersey today for the Pirates, but I didn't have a hat that would match it, so I just like, nah. So anyways, 10,625 wins as a franchise, 10 Hall of Famers, Roberto Clemente, top 10 baseball player, if not top 5. Bill Mazeroski, Willie Stargell, just for names that people would know. 5 for 7 in World Series. You get there, they win.
Wow.
17 playoff appearances as a franchise. Again, a team with a ton of history and legacy players that
a team with only history, Nick. Like they 17 playoff appearances is like none since like the Reagan administration.
That's not true. McCutcheon brought him to a couple.
Remember they had the first 3 years of the single wild card game. They went to all 3 and lost all 3.
If you
that's right.
If you talk to any Yankees fan, the wild card game counts as the playoffs.
Yeah, apparently. Well, do you know starting pitcher for the Pirates in those 3 games?
Garrett Cole.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And look where it got him.
To lose another wild card game.
$356 million.
So I got Garrett Cole a big fat contract somewhere else is what it got him.
Yeah. To lose the same game.
Right. He still hasn't won that round.
Mm-hmm.
Goodness gracious. All right. Well, that does it for our 7th.
No, did
Harrison win, right? 6?
I had the Dodgers. Yep.
Yeah. Oh shit, my bad. You're right.
Yep.
So our top 5 is going to be a little different because I got some teams in there that you guys have already stated. So that's going to be interesting too.
It'll be fun.
Next week, tune in. We got 5-1.
Top 5 coming at you.
Top 5. All right, we are moving on to the rounding third segment, where we put out there kind of a fun question. If you could rename any of the MLB franchises, what would you change the name to? Harrison?
So I actually went very traditional with this and looked around the league, and I said, look, a lot of these team names make a lot of sense for where they are or what's around them. But there were a couple that, so first of all, I guess to preface this, they're the Cleveland Indians. I'm not even going to acknowledge the Guardians. So they're the Cleveland Indians. They will be the Cleveland Indians. Chief Wahoo lives forever. So I'm just going to skip past Cleveland. But there were 2 in particular that I actually wanted to be more traditional with, and I look at the Angels. I don't like this Los Angeles Angels nonsense. You're not in LA. You're in Anaheim, but you're in one of the major destinations of California. I would love to see them go back to being the California Angels, bring those pinstripe uniforms back, start flapping in the bleachers again to get some mojo going. I think they're missing that. And then I'd go back and I would change the Tampa Bay Rays to the Devil Rays because I really like the Devil Ray better than the Ray.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Ray just doesn't feel very tough.
No. How about you, Sean? Do you have any changes?
Yeah, I'm taking the Washington Nationals. I'm putting them back up in Montreal, and I'm picking the Montreal Expos. Awesome uniforms, awesome logo, shit stadium, but we can deal with that later. But everything about the Montreal Expos is way better than the Washington Nationals. Just better.
Agree.
Yep.
The color scheme better. The logo better. The uniforms 20 times better. Just better.
Yeah.
And I feel like MLB missed an opportunity to bring Washington back as the Senators and just keep the lineage. Why start over?
Yeah, I don't know. I wonder, they were really bad, when they were the Senators. I wonder if it has to do with, a branding type of thing. I'm with Stacy, too, the California Angels. Because it's, nothing makes me, and I will admit it's irrationally, it shouldn't make me as frustrated as it does, but the LA Angels of Anaheim. That doesn't make sense.
So dumb.
It's not just stupid. It doesn't make sense.
It's dumb. It's
dumb.
dumb.
You might as well call that'd be like saying the New Jersey Jets of New York.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? It's dumb. Anyways, what was I saying before that?
Expos.
Expos.
National
Crap Stadium. We can fix that.
Oh, yeah. So I think the Senators. I wonder if it has to do with if they were so bad, they were just thought of as just absolute dumpster fire losers. Like, I wonder if going back to Washington, they were just like, we don't want any association with that. You know, like, I think, like, in a similar way, like the Patriots, like, I would love to see the Patriots go back to, like, that old school, like, old logo.
The
right?
Pat Patriot?
Pat's
They
Patriot.
are. I think they are. I think
Well,
they voted on it.
I heard the rumor, but I don't know how true that is. But I would love to, but I'm afraid Kraft still, like, when they were them, they were terrible. And, like, then all of a sudden they got this new logo and they're, like, the greatest dynasty in all of sports. And now, like, I don't think it would change any of our opinions. But I just think, like, from a historical aspect, like, I wonder if when they moved to Washington, if they were just like, you know, we don't want anything to do with the Senators.
Yeah.
I don't know. I could be totally way off.
It's a fair point. That could be the case.
But I'm with you. I mean, it was a huge missed opportunity. And baseball should go back to Montreal. I don't care that they had that one. I'll never forget. I stayed home sick one day from school, and I'm watching Sports Center. And the Expos had a home game. There was literally one guy in the stands. And he sat in his seat. It was, like, way up. And he was like, I'm not. This is my seat. Like, he was the only one in the stadium.
Awesome. Do you guys remember the heckler who used to sit behind home plate at the Rays games?
Oh, yeah.
Remember that when the place was so empty you could hear him boom throughout the stadium?
I remember ESPN did like MLB. I had to, because I don't think MLB Network was a thing back then. And they did like an interview, and he was just like, I look at the schedule and I pick one player from every team. He's like, and I just hammer that guy all game, which I think is like hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man. Before we get to mine, because mine are not very traditional, we'll go with what we had on our question of the week. Yeah. Ken Sawyer said the Guardians back to the Indians. I mean, that's every baseball fan wants that. The Guardians is the dumbest name I've ever.
And I'll interject real quick. If you're going to change him to the Guardians, which I really don't like, but if you're going to do it for political correctness purposes and all that, like, fine, like, whatever. Can we not have Tom Hanks do the announcement? Like, he's not from Cleveland. Like, why'd you have Tom Hanks do it? I thought that was the most bizarre thing of all time.
I didn't even know that was a thing. So
the official. Go on their Twitter.
I'm going to. I'll
look at like the
own.
announcement. It's like a 90-second video, and it's like Tom Hanks being like, "We are Cleveland." Like, you're not even from Cleveland.
Yeah, I still feel like if you're going to change that team name, they should have been like the Cleveland Rocks to tie into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and then you can bring the cast of Drew Carey out just saying Cleveland Rocks.
Yeah, man, you could have gone a ton of different directions than Guardians.
So kind of on that, Nick from the SOS podcast said the Cleveland Wild Things, which gives a Major League reference, right? Major League reference and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, because, I mean, you could come out to Wild Thing every single game.
That would be incredible.
Bumping. I mean, and that could be a really sick logo if that's done right.
Yeah,
I mean, absolutely, dude.
And then if they rename the team the Wild Things, they immediately have to retire number 99.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And he's throwing out the first pitch.
Absolutely.
And then Mark Cobb said he wants the Boston Braves to come back. So I thought
like from Atlanta, like leave Atlanta and then come back here.
I don't know. I think he just likes the name the Boston Braves. So
interesting. I do.
Yeah,
I agree.
All right, so here are my non-traditional picks. I would take the Texas Rangers, and I'd just put Walker in front of it, and it'd be Chuck Norris kicking a baseball. So they have the Walker Texas Rangers. I mean, I think that'd be pretty badass. I would change the Arizona Diamondbacks to the Arizona Danger Noodles. And then if the Portland Sea Dogs ever changed their name, I would change them to the Portland Beach Chickens.
Minor League Baseball has some of the coolest names ever.
Oh,
and
they don't great, dude.
They don't make sense, and they're incredible.
The Trash Pandas, that's number one.
I mean, but they're not even like a city. They're the it's
Rocket City. Yeah, Rocket City Trash.
The Rocket City Trash Pandas. I mean, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever seen the Savannah Bananas?
Yes, dude.
Yeah.
Oh my god,
Facebook page is hilarious.
Like they are like the coolest minor league. I would live in Savannah just to go to their games. I mean, because that is like the coolest minor league team ever.
The Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp, awesome.
Right.
Jumbo Shrimp.
Like what? Like what? It's incredible.
The Akron Rubber Ducks.
Akron. I mean, you go down the list, man. I mean, all of them are just amazing.
The Rumble Ponies.
The Lansing Lugnuts.
Rumble Ponies. Lansing Lugnuts. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many good ones. But yeah, those were That's what I would change mine to.
The Richmond Flying Squirrels. Now you're talking.
Yeah, the
So many good ones.
So Rocket City Trash Pandas. Where's Rocket City? Where are they from?
It's like somewhere in like Mississippi or Alabama or somewhere down there. Because I remember looking it up and like I don't even know what that means.
It means nothing.
It's a raccoon.
Yeah,
Panda's a raccoon.
The logo is amazing.
Their manager is Jay Bell, former major leaguer.
Oh wow, former Pittsburgh Pirate.
That's right, he was.
So maybe they are Pirates organization.
So they're in Madison, Alabama.
Yeah, they belong to the Angels.
Angels.
I mean, that's the sickest logo.
Yeah, it's so.
Yeah, that is.
I mean,
it
it's
is literally a panda in a trash can that's actually a rocket. Like how I want that hat just because it's so cool.
They're awesome.
We have the Carolina Mudcats down here, and it's a catfish. It's pretty cool.
Nice.
There's some good ones down here.
That's so good.
All right, so that does it for rounding third. We will move on to heading home, where this is usually our free agent talk. We are going to talk free agents, but obviously not any that signed because the MLB sucks right now. So
nobody's signing.
Right. So we are going to talk about the remaining big names. So here are a couple. I'll just throw them out. You guys can pick who you want to talk about, and we'll go from there. Freddie Freeman, Anthony Rizzo, Kyle Schwarber, Carlos Correa, Trevor Story, Chris Bryant, Kyle Seager, Castellanos, Michael Conforto, Clayton Kershaw, and John Lesta. Who would we like to pick on out of that group? They still have yet to sign.
Go ahead.
Well, why don't we
pick one?
Yeah, why don't you pick one, Nick?
I want Trevor Story to be our second baseman next year so bad. So bad. And there's a lot of talks saying that the Red Sox are, as soon as the lockout lifts, like it's gonna be like bang, and he signed.
I would hurt somebody I loved for Trevor Story to come here and play second base. I would do it. I would. I love the way he plays. I love his game. I love his aggressiveness. People around here, I think, would love Trevor Story. People love the way Dustin Pedroia plays. Trevor Story is just like he's a dirt dog. He plays the game 110%, dives for balls. He's breaking up double plays at second base. He's aggressive on the base paths. I love everything about his game, and I think with a manager like Alex Cora, I think he would fit in so well in Boston.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stacy just asked, where's Kyle Seager going to go? Honestly, we kind of talked about this before. It would be really cool if he went to Texas and played on the left side with his brother.
It would.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I could see if Seattle signs Story, they could possibly bring Seager back.
Yeah.
I could see him re-signing with the Mariners possibly if they get, But
you
they have
wonder,
JP Crawford there though, right? Who's there? So I don't know.
You almost wonder if he has this kind of understanding with Seattle where he's just like, Seattle's like, hey, give us a minute to go see what we want to do, and then you can either go somewhere else, blah blah blah. I wouldn't necessarily see him. I don't see him being one of the first ones off the board. See him letting things kind of play out. Let's see what Seattle does. Let's see what other teams are doing, and let me see where I fit in. Is kind of where I see him. What I see him doing.
I think Seager's going to wait. I think he's going to wait it out. There's going to be some team out there that either needs him as a bridge or wants to put him around a young core. I've heard some rumors about Toronto because they can move Biggio around. I've heard rumors that the Marlins are interested in him because Jeter loves the idea of making him a cornerstone to help the young players. I think there's a home for him, and I think he's going to have choices.
Nothing against Jeter. I love Jeter, but he spent his whole career in Seattle doing that. If I'm him, I'm not leaving Seattle to go to Miami to be someone that I have to mentor young players. I always did that for my whole career in Seattle. I want to go somewhere where I can win.
Yeah, the thing I worry about with Seager though is I don't know that a lot of winning ball clubs are going to want to pay him the money he's looking for. I mean, he's clearly at the tail. He's clearly towards the back end of his career. His average was in the toilet last year. He was just trying to hit bombs. I don't know that he's a guy that a a Yankees or a
Right.
competitive team is going to say, yeah, we should bring him in for a couple of years.
Well,
I think he's going to
fair.
have to go pick some middle of the road team that, maybe he can help, sway. But I don't see him
Fair.
having a ton of kind of Class A options.
I'll give you that. Although I don't think I think Miami's well below middle of the class, but I think I do think we're going to find out about Kyle Seager real quick. One of two things: does he care about making money more? Or does he care about winning more? Because I think there are winning ball clubs out there that will pay him less than what he's looking for, and he'll have a chance to win a title, and he could be a key member of that team. But if he wants to go out and make as much money as he can, then I'm with you. It's not going to be with a contender.
Yeah. What do we think about Correa?
I don't know, man. I mean, it's so hard not to. I mean, it's Yankees, right? I mean, like and I don't know. I hear different things, and I'll be honest. Like once this lockout happened, I kind of taken a step back from like reading all these free agency stuff because like nothing's gonna move.
Right.
But a guy like that is just he's been in the spotlight forever. I mean, he was touted as like one of the best prospects in baseball in Houston, and then he came up and did what he did as a young player, and then they won a World Series, and then they're in the middle of this cheating thing, and Carlos Correa's in the middle of all of it. Like this guy's entire, probably 16, 17 years old up till now, he's been in the spot. Like that's a Yankee. I mean, like it's almost like he was like groomed to like become the peak of his career and then go sign like a crazy A-Rod deal like in New York or like some shit like that.
I think the sleeper team is the Cubs.
You think so?
I think so. I think Correa goes back to Houston because I think he'd be silly not to. I think for Correa, he's homegrown. He could be an icon. He could be Houston's Derek Jeter if he goes back and finishes his career there. I actually think the sleeper pick is the Red Sox. I actually because of Alex Cora, and because of the market, I don't see him being a guy who'd like New York. He'd like the spotlight. I don't think he'd do well in that with that fan base. I think the Red Sox are going to look at both he and Story. If I'm the Yankees, I'd rather have Story. I think he's a better fit for what you need. But I think Correa ultimately goes back to Houston.
Well, when's Xander up?
He can opt out next year.
Opt out next year. So
it's next year's opt out. Okay.
Right. And the Red Sox have indicated they feel like he will opt out. They feel like he's not going to see the end of that contract.
I agree.
Yeah. So then you just move Xander because Correa has already come out and said he will not play another position.
Correct.
He's a shortstop and will stay a shortstop. So then, yeah.
I like Story better than Correa, but I think if you're the Red Sox, if you're going to make that kind of move and piss Xander Bogaerts off, you're going to do it for Correa. But I think that Alex Cora would be comfortable bringing a guy like Correa in and having him fit because of his experience with him. But I think ultimately none of it matters, and Correa goes back to Houston.
Yeah, I was only saying the Cubs before I got rudely disconnected that that the Cubs have the money. I mean, the Cubs cut everybody, and they could literally just dump $40 million a year on Correa. That's the only reason why I'm saying that the Cubs could be a sleeper team for Correa. Not that he's going to go and compete, but he'd go and get paid. Yeah, that's just what I was thinking.
Yeah.
No, it makes sense. They've got the checkbook for sure.
Mm-hmm. So Freeman and Rizzo, are we saying that Freeman stays in Atlanta, Rizzo stays in New York? I mean, are we pretty convinced on those two?
I don't see Freeman going anywhere else. Not after they just win a title.
No.
I mean, he is Atlanta. I mean, I don't see that. Rizzo, I'm not entirely sure. I mean, did he love New York?
Yeah,
he did.
I'm
so then probably
pretty sure. Yeah,
so
I think they stay.
So yeah, then I'm sure he stays.
And Luke Voigt, I think, is on his way to Japan. So
yeah,
that's what I've heard. So I think Rizzo's their first baseman. I mean,
I can see Rizzo staying in New York. I can also see him going back to Chicago. He didn't want to leave Chicago. He had pretty deep roots there, and really, the Red Sox traded him there, and he really only came up with the Cubs. I mean, the Cubs are home for him. I see him going.
Didn't we trade him?
We traded him to San Diego.
Yeah, he was.
So that's right.
Then
he came back around.
Yeah,
that's right. Then he came back around to Chicago, but
because that's when Theo was in Chicago. Then Theo wanted him back because he drafted
exactly.
him.
Exactly. So I see Rizzo. I see Rizzo either staying with the Yankees, although he wasn't great there, and I don't know if that was health or what, but he was not great in New York. But he's not a high strikeout guy. He's got a good glove, good average. He'll balance that lineup a little bit, take advantage of that short porch in New York. So he makes a lot of sense in New York, but I really think he'd like to go back to Chicago.
Yeah.
I mean, if the Cubs could bring him back and Correa, that'd be a nice little start to free agency for the Cubs.
Yeah,
wouldn't be bad.
Sure. So all this nostalgia, bringing JBJ back for the Red Sox. Do they bring back John Lester, another lefty? I mean, they just signed Rich Hill and James Paxton. Do they sign a third lefty? Does John Lester give you anything now? I mean, he's 38.
No, he doesn't. I don't know if it would be worth it, and I don't know. And I like I've always loved Lester, like when he was in Boston, and even when he won it the Cubs. I don't know. Even if there was a little bit left in it, I just feel like the way they treated Lester on his way out the door, I think has almost forever soured Boston with Lester. Like, I'm not saying he hates it. Like, what do I know? I don't know the guy personally, but right. I just remember how badly they botched that, and they clearly didn't want him at the time, but like they kept saying that they wanted him. They kept saying they're going to make it work, and then just keep giving him like bullshit offers. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Lester was just like, you know what, I'm done with you guys.
Yeah.
Not that I think it would really hurt the Red Sox because I don't think he has much to offer right now, but
yeah. Where does Clayton Kershaw go? Does he just ultimately resign with the Dodgers?
I guess the question is, do we think anybody wants him?
Right.
That's why I'm saying he resigns with the Dodgers. The Dodgers will be almost like stuck with him.
I feel like the Dodgers would re-sign him as like a lifetime achievement award to bring him back for 1 or 2 more runs. I mean, but the guy's got nothing left in the tank. I mean, he was a shell of himself the last couple of years. He can't hold up anymore. His stuff just isn't good. He's a 5-starter on a good day. And I don't think there's a lot of teams that are going to come calling. I think the league views him as a once great pitcher who's just a shell of himself now. And unless the Dodgers want to extend the olive branch and let him retire on his terms, I think he may be looking around without a home if they won't take him back.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I think he stays in LA. I do.
Yep.
I mean, for all the things Harrison said, but like even like half joking, half serious, like I mean, they make the big deal. Like his high school best friend, Matt Stafford, plays in LA now. Like and it's noted like how close those guys are. Like they're best friends. Like Stafford's now in LA. Like I don't see this now as the time that Clayton Kershaw's like, all right, I'm going to go to like Detroit or like wherever.
Right.
Like he's made his money. He's had his success. He's listed as one of the good pitchers of our generation. Like I just don't see him uprooting and going somewhere else.
Yeah, I'm with you. Last guy we'll talk about tonight. There's 2 more. Sorry, we got Kyle Schwarber.
I like him. I just don't know if his style of baseball is like fits well with the Sox for like a full year. Like I think the Sox went and they got him at the deadline. It was kind of needed. He obviously had so many of those big hits in the postseason. Like I'm not to take anything away, but like over the course of a full year, like I don't know. I mean, I like him, and I wouldn't ruin my day if they brought him back, But I don't know.
It's a guy that's like as hot as the sun, and then he can just cool off like the dead of winter.
Oh,
like there's like streaky.
Which we already have. We just brought another one of those back in JBJ. So it's like you can't have like how many of those guys can you have in the lineup?
Apparently 9.
Yeah. So you put a second and a third guy like that in the lineup, like you're playing with fire. So to speak.
Well, and Schwarber's a weird fit with the Red Sox as an everyday player. So with Renfroe out, you're too left-handed with him in the lineup. You could sign him to a 2 or 3 year deal, knowing that JD's gone after this next season. I don't know. I feel like Schwarber's another one of those guys who there's not really a great fit. He's one of those players who's just good enough you're interested, but not so good that like you're going to rush to sign him. And he's just kind of a weird fit. He's an outfielder, sort of. He's really more of a DH, and more of an everyday DH kind of guy. The Red Sox already have one of those. Can he play some outfield and some occasional first base? Yeah, but I feel like he's a weird fit.
Yeah, it's fair. Then Chris Bryant.
Mets. Send him to the Mets. The Mets need him. Go sign him. Go run out, and whenever this is over, 5 minutes after this is over, you will send that release out that we signed Chris Bryant. They're clearly not averse to spending money.
No.
Cohen's made that a thing. They went out and gave Scherzer. Ridiculous. You guys you're sending a message early on, but they obviously teams knew this lockout was coming. So they went and they got the one guy that they wanted. They needed to have him before this lockout started. They went out and they got him. This is another opportunity to show the fan base that you're not blowing smoke up their ass. When this lockout ends, go get Chris Bryant.
Yeah.
It makes too much sense. He fits too well there.
Yeah, and J.D. Davis was ranked 30th out of 30 major league teams at third base last year. So,
and he seems like a nice guy. Chris Bryant. Chris Bryant's the answer.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Yeah.
Yeah, another organization that's in desperate need for third baseman is the Phillies.
Yeah, true.
They got a couple of young guys there that are struggling to adjust. They got Bohm there who can hit a little, but his defense is horrendous. And Bryant and Bryant's flexibility. If some of these young guys stick, you can move them around. So I think you're right. I think that the Mets would be a good place. I also think the Phillies could be a good place. I see him landing in the NL East somewhere.
That would be tough for the Mets, though. If the Mets don't, you lose out a guy like that for him to stay in your division, go against you 1,000 times a year. That would be, you can't let that happen. And that's another reason why, be the first one there when this thing lifts and this thing's over. Be the first one.
Yeah.
Just, you can't, because I'm with you on Philly needing one. You can't let him go to Philly.
No, not if you're the Mets. You can't do it.
You can't let him go to Philly.
Yeah. All right.
I also saw him connected to the Nationals at one point because of Scott Boras, which I find interesting. I don't see the Nationals being a fit. They got Carter Kieboom, who they think is the second coming. So I don't get that one, but
yeah.
But again, NL East. It's all NL East teams he's been connected to.
Yeah, Marlins too.
Sure, why not?
Might as well.
The Marlins are talking to a lot of people whether they're actually going to open the checkbook or not, whether they can even find their checkbook or not.
They did get
another question.
They got Jacob Stallings from the Pirates, and then they did sign someone else too, outfielder, I think.
Yeah,
so they made a couple moves, but it's not
big money.
No, it's typical Marlins.
Yeah.
But all right, anything else before we wrap it up?
No, I think we're good.
No.
Happy to be back with you, boys. It was good to be back.
Yes,
great to have you.
Absolutely.
For sure.
So please subscribe, share our podcast, and come back next week, and we'll have the top 5 of our list, and then we'll put out the question of the week either tomorrow or Wednesday. So be sure to answer that question, and we will see you guys next Monday night at 8.